We did 75 last year. This year goal is 250.
Today, I'm interviewing Harvey. Harvey started with dropshipping 6 years ago and today is operating a portfolio of 9-figure e-commerce brands.
We scaled from 0 to 280K per day in like 2 weeks.
And what makes this interview so unique is that I've actually known Harvey for years because he's attending every single mastermind that I host and I've watched him build this business very, very closely.
Unit economics makes a huge difference. Like 80% gross margin, anything less than that is not really acceptable.
In the next 60 minutes, we're going super deep on what actually made this business so successful.
An offer isn't the product. The offer is...
We've covered how he was able to scale native ads to $300,000 a day in revenue. We covered his unique post-purchase upsell strategy that's taking him from an $80 AOV on the front end to $160 to $200 on the back end.
Before we had an upsell that was $150. We doubled the price to go to $300. The take rate used to be like 33%. And when we doubled the price.
And we also broke down how he's rebuilding his whole leadership and operational team to now carry the jump to 250 million per year revenue. So if you're in e-commerce, this is the best video you're going to watch this month. So let's get straight into it. Harvey, thank you so much for doing this. I've been excited to do this pod for weeks now. I've known you for years, and one of the exciting stuff for me is always seeing friends build great companies, right? So it's the same with you, whereas with Floris, with Merrick, I have like so many friends over the years where you kind of see like each other once or twice a year in Dubai, Marbella, all around the world. And then at one point, all of a sudden they have like big 8- and 9-figure companies, right? So today I just want to sit down, kind of talk about your journey, because you've also been in e-commerce a lot for a long time and you scale pretty heavily now, and I think there's a lot of like really interesting stuff that we can cover. But first of all, for the people who are not yet familiar with you, please just give a quick intro from your side.
Yeah, I'm Harvey Carnegie. I am in e-com since COVID, so 5-6 years at this stage. I have a health company. We've been running this same company for the last 3 years. Before that, lots of dropshipping stuff, health, beauty, gadgets, all that kind of stuff. And we scaled pretty aggressively with this one. We did 75 last year. This year goal is 250.
Yeah, pretty sick. Big numbers. I think what's really interesting, because I see this a lot actually with people who are kind of going away from dropshipping and they're going all into one brand, and then 1 to 3 years later I talk to them and they are doing huge numbers. So what was like the key moment back then where you were like, okay, I would just stop with dropshipping, I would stop doing like 5-10 stores at the moment and just go all in on this?
Yeah, it was kind of delusional. I was like, right, well, we're going to build something and sell it for $100 million. Like that was, we're building this brand and we're going to exit it for crazy money. We're like 2 years into it, we're like, I'm probably not going to sell this, right? But that was the thought process, was let's stop doing these churn and burn type stores where we scale up offers and build something longer term, which we definitely built longer term stuff. But I think the same with everyone who kind of starts a brand, the whole goal in mind is like, let's try and exit this.
Yeah, okay, 100%. And for me, I always love people where they're just really convicted, right? So with you, I can feel the conviction. What is in your mind where you're like, okay, well, I did 75 last year. I know I'm going to do 250 this year. Like, what makes you so certain that you're actually going to achieve that?
Yeah, well, the year before we did 12. So we went 12 to 75. And honestly, the difference between 75 and 250 is... Okay, if it was even across the year, the difference is quite big. But we have scaled. We've done $1 million days. We've done like 17 in a month. So if we just maintained what that 17 was throughout the year, we would hit pretty close to the 250 anyway. So the business wouldn't have to look that much different. It would actually probably look, for us to hit 250, it would look a lot better than it did at 75. Because 75 we scaled up extremely fast, and we broke a lot of things, right? So for 250, honestly, it's just more of the same. Like, we have a blueprint now. We've launched multiple offers, and every offer we launch, we use the same blueprint in terms of like, we have a funnel structure that we know works. We have the best in the world media buyers. We have great copy, and we know when we do it, every time we launch an offer, that it just takes off. So it's pretty much just more of the same. And then obviously the operation side needs to be a little bit more dialed in.
Yeah, interesting. And for me, that's also like, I would say, almost the three main areas I want to cover in this podcast. So first of all, I want to kind of dive a bit deeper into the whole niche that you're focusing on. Secondly, you already mentioned like funnels, marketing, and all of that, which is super exciting. And then I think at the end, we can also give some behind the scenes look into you're building a huge company, you have a lot of employees, like what do you think about leadership management and everything? Mm-hmm. But for the beginning, and I see a lot of people actually over the past years kind of going into the health, wellness, beauty space. What was your decision-making process behind that, where you were like, okay, that's one niche I'm going all in on?
Yeah, the thought process behind it was mainly because the skills that I had learned, and I call them skills, but they probably weren't that refined back then, was advertorials. When you look at the format of an advertorial, typically an older demographic. I'm not talking about listicles now because like they go for pretty young people too, but the longer form advertorials, you typically want to be targeting someone who's used to that format. So they grew up reading newspapers, they still read MSN.com. So it was something that was going to serve a market where there was like an older demo. And it was honestly between skincare and health. And we just hit one product. I launched the name of the store, put the first product on there, and after like 2 weeks it was running. If I had trouble and came up against obstacles for maybe 3, 4, 5 months, maybe I would have gone into beauty, but it just happened to the first product that I launched under this brand. It just worked.
Makes sense. And was there anything before like starting with that offer and that brand where you were like looking at different markets, total addressable audiences, anything like that kind of happened? Or was it more where you said, okay, you tried this offer and it worked and then you went all in?
Yeah, back then, honestly, I didn't even look at unit economics. I was just like, this product looks good. I took none of that into account. And it not bit us in the ass, but like the way we do things is completely differently now. In terms of TAM, I wouldn't have thought of it like TAM, but what I did think was older people are in pain. Typically, they've got more disposable income. They're going to pay to get out of pain. And there's more people experiencing these issues more and more every year, right? Modern living, people sitting at desks. They're becoming into older people and they're having much more of these issues that we're trying to solve.
Yeah. Makes sense. No, it's interesting, but that also speaks to you as an entrepreneur where you find something that works and then you go all in.
Yeah.
I've had the same in my journey where sometimes, I don't know if it was luck or you're just trying so many things and then you just find one thing. And one of my mentors used to say that as soon as you find one thing that works, you just have to squeeze it to death. Like every single drop of juice out of that, squeeze it to death and then move to the next.
I would say we've definitely done that.
Yeah, 100%. And also, like, take me through the scale a bit, right? You said 12 million first year, 75 last year. You want 250 this year. Obviously, that also means that you've scaled the employees and the team size, organization structure in the back end too. What were like some of the things that you didn't see coming that broke, right? In terms of whether that's front end, whether that's back end, whether that's operation, right? What was something where you're like, okay, I wouldn't have figured that this thing would break?
Like honestly, everything has broken at some point or another. Like we've had supply chain has broken. Literally, we've been told XYZ is happening, and then we get into the problem is when you scale aggressively like this, especially on the likes of native networks, you really don't want to descale because it can take. You might have to start everything from scratch. It's not like Meta where you got a big CBO at 20,000 a day and you lower it to 10. CPA gets better. With native, oftentimes the results get worse and then you can't scale back up. You start from zero. So we've had issues with supply chain where we were promised certain lead times and that didn't happen. We've experienced everything from cyber security attacks where people got into our CRM and we're directing like a certain percentage of traffic to a land or a checkout that looked exactly like ours. Results are really bad. You're trying to figure out where the bottleneck is and you're like, this doesn't make any sense. So then we had cybersecurity come in and build stuff out. So there's endless things. Every single department has had obstacles that has come in, but these things you learn and kind of they make you better as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, interesting. That's the first one. I never heard that one. A lot of spoofing, ad accounts and stuff like that. Yeah, okay, then that's crazy. And like take me to because you also just mentioned that in the beginning, unit economics wasn't really a thing, right? How do you think about unit economics now? How do you think about the existing products? How do you think about coming up with new products in terms of the unit economics? And yeah, I would just let you answer that question, then I already have a follow-up for that.
Yeah, for sure. Now, unit economics we think about before we launch anything. We think about unit economics because we've seen there's so many different points to this, but at scale, unit economics makes a huge difference, right? Both in terms of like actually what your gross margin is, but also picking what product you're going to be launching based on your cash flow. Because, for example, if you've got a product that costs you like $4, right, and you have to buy 100,000 units, it's 400,000. But if your product costs 16, you're looking at a completely different story, right? So then you have to cash flow 1.6 mil or 400,000. So thinking about your available cash flow that you actually have access to, what terms you have with your supplier, maybe you only pay 30% down. But these are all things you have to think about if you are going to go into hyperscale, right? And then in terms of actual unit economics, we don't want anything like 80% gross margin for us is like anything more than that is, or anything less than that is not really acceptable. How we make that up doesn't just have to be on the front end product though, right? So we could have a front end product that we know is going to be 65% gross margin, but we know we have a super solid upsell one that's going to be highly profitable, that the take rate is going to be 30-40% on. And then if you average out what the actual unit or the economics of the offer as a whole, then if we can hit that 80% gross margin, we're still happy. So it's not just dependent on the front end product.
Yeah. Very interesting. And that was actually the follow-up question that I was going to ask, because I know that you go super hard on like funnels, and that also kind of takes me to the next section a bit of like not only thinking, okay, you have one product on the front end, but thinking about like the whole post-purchase upsell sequence and like everything that you can kind of give to the customer basically in one run. Yep. Maybe, because I know we talked about this, I think 1.5 years ago over WhatsApp a bit, maybe take me through the thought process of high level, what's the strategy of how you come up with an offer or potentially even like an offer sequence where you then overall get good results? Yeah.
So for us, an offer isn't the product. The offer is the problem that they're having. How do we solve it completely? And how do we sequence out the products out? So a lot of the time what we don't want to do is give the customer a all-in-one solution that fixes everything, right? So like, let's say an all-in-one for beauty, a all-in-one serum that solves everything. There's a company called Vibrance that does extremely well. They do that. That doesn't work for our model. So we want to basically take all the problems that they're solving, or all the problems that they have, and we want to sequence solve them. So we'll sell the front-end product is going to be the mechanism to get them into the upsell. We don't really make any money. If this is an $80 product, we want to go for a 160 to 200 AOV. And the way we do that is the upsell flow shouldn't be just heavily discounted, like, hey, buy this and throw stuff at them. You need to basically solve a new problem. So for example, if someone has hip pain, right? You want to basically get them in on this is going to help with the pain for your hip. Then the upsell one is going to be like, maybe that solves the underlying problem. So the actual real root cause of that, right? That's one example. Or maybe the upsell gets them the results, it pairs with the front end product to get the results faster, right? Typically we'll also have a supplement layer, which is going to be, it's going to be, once the problem is gone, keep it gone, right? Yeah. Think about other problems think about other problems that they have. A lot of the time in pain, sleep is a huge problem. So maybe we can sell some kind of sleep aid or something that helps with their sleep and basically solve the whole problem. And this only comes from doing the research on the customer, right? You have to, not just the physical pain that they're experiencing, you have to think about their day-to-day life, what that looks like and all the problems they're experiencing due to this pain. And then that upsell flow makes a lot of sense. And a lot of the time how we sequence it out is going to be, if it's a consumable, it's going to be more the same for upsell one. If it's not, doesn't make sense. If you've got a hip pain sleeve, right? They've only got 2 hips. You can't sell them, hey, take another 6 hip sleeves. Like, that makes 0 sense. What you want to do then is upsell them something. We like to go higher ticket. So let's say the front end is 60. We want to sell something for 150, 250 and go for a 20-30% take rate. Because the price elasticity is massive on upsell one. No. So we'll typically sell something like an additional product that's going to basically solve the real root cause of that problem, like introduce a new problem it causes. Then upsell 2 is going to be like, maybe there's the muscles around their hip has gone weak because they haven't used it. So something to help stimulate the muscles or something to make them stronger, right? So it logically makes sense for the customer, like, oh, okay, that's also a problem. Or something like sleep, and then the supplement end is going to be the last upsell.
Yeah, makes sense. And I think you right now already went like really in depth in terms of like a lot of areas. So I just want to break it down a bit for the people listening. So maybe we can go through the step by step, right? So we covered the high level strategy of the offer, which I think is already really interesting about how you think about building an offer, because what I see with most brand owners, they focus front end and then maybe if they have post purchase upsells, what they will do is more of the same. And that's about it, right? Yeah. So that's what they do. So maybe first things first, talk me through the advertorial. Right, so you already mentioned like advertorial long form typically for all the audiences, but how do you think about advertorial funnels? And then afterwards we can kind of then go into checkout, upsell strategy and everything. But just advertorials for now, how do you think about the architecture and how do you make an advertorial work for like cold traffic?
Mm-hmm. My thought process on this has changed recently, and it's completely channel dependent, right? So if you look at Meta, for example, and you look at all the big brands that are crushing on Meta, I haven't found one that's using an advertorial. Listicles for sure. A lot of them are direct to PDP. So this is something we're experimenting with at the moment, where we no longer are trying to hide the sales process, where it's like, you know, doctor finds XYZ and there's no mention of product. We're now going more listicle, direct to PDP, and doing a lot of testing there, and we're seeing some good results. On native, on the other hand, which is our biggest channel by far, that doesn't work. The native is still old school, long form funnel, like, you know, super cold audience. So you don't want to mention the product at the start. They came from reading an article. It needs to be a continuation on like what the headline and the image basically promised them there. So if you're talking about this one strange hack, headline should also be about the one strange hack, because that's what they're expecting to see. So the advertorial typically is going to be on native. I'll go first because they're bigger channel. No. Maybe from authority figure. So it's a doctor, it could be a physiotherapist, some kind of authority figure, and it's going to be their story about typically how they found out about the problem, or how they basically designed the product. There could be a breaking news one. So it's like breaking news could be like this new discovery on the unique mechanism, blah 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 blah, and it can come from like an interview style. Then there's the first person story. That's going to be the first person hero's journey on how they went about solving their problem. And in each of these, you're going to talk about the day-to-day pain points, like the emotional layer on what they're experiencing day to day, and then get them into the unique mechanism. So like, you know, problem is going to be the top, agitate that. And then instead of solution, you're going to kind of tickle the like discovery story, and then you get into the solution. And then you've got like an AOV money close on native. So native, typically you don't have any CTAs except for down towards the very bottom, because you want to force consumption. They're pretty much all we run on native. So that would be advertorial. Facebook on the other side is literally listicle PDP. And what we're doing now is we're nearly treating PDPs as if they're creatives at the moment. We're churning out not tests, not headline tests, like complete net new. So similar messaging. We're looking at our post-purchase survey feedback, and then we're just coming out with a bunch of different iterations where we've different messaging and completely different style. They look like completely different pages.
Yeah. Okay, very interesting. And I think we have to go a bit channel specific here, but for example, like first it was really interesting to see with IM8, like they always have like around 2,000 ads live in the ads library, and at any given moment we have like 40 to 50 different landing pages. And as you said, we've also tested advertorials, but then the things that work the best is like listicle format, like whether that's really on brand or off brand. And then what we've seen a lot of success with are those like influencer driven pages, or like authority driven pages, but not like doctor experience is something that cures cancer, but more like somebody like from the scientific board of advisors, like directly showcasing the product and everything. So I'm just curious how you think about the output, because I do talk to some brand owners and they like, I tested one landing page or like 2 landing pages and it didn't work. So what do you think is like an output required, maybe in terms of ads, and then also in terms of like how many different pages you have? And you can answer that for native and or meta to really hit scale.
I think it's about finding where the constraint is, because on meta, for example, right, it's like and we've fallen into this trap where we're trying to solve every problem. So we're trying to increase conversion rate, we're trying to increase AOV, and we're trying to get better creative. That's great, but the thing is, you don't get any feedback loops from that. Like, you need to create a hypothesis and look at, let's say you're capped, you're doing 20K per day on meta. what one thing can you focus on? Of course, business as usual, you're going to get new creatives into the account anyway. I'm not saying stop creative production, but you need to look at it and say, like, currently conversion rate is 0.6%, right? There's no point in working on AOV. There's no point in like thinking, oh, Facebook is broken. Your constraint is the conversion rate. So then you break down, like, look at the click-through rate on your advertorial, sales page, checkout, find where the point is. Maybe your advertorial click-through rate is too high, right? Where they're not actually consuming any of it. But maybe you don't have a conversion rate problem. You just have a super low AOV. So I think it's not about like number of pages. It's about solving the problem. And like, you need to think about it first of all. Okay, my hypothesis is that conversion rate is 0.6%. If I do this, then I expect conversion rate to go up. Then you do that, and then the next week you need to see, was your hypothesis right? So did conversion rate go up, right? If conversion rate did go up, you then get into the next problem where it's like, did the business grow? If the business didn't grow, maybe you didn't need to fix conversion rate, or you need to think about it again, and maybe now you need to do, okay, we need to increase creative volume. And now the conversion rate is high enough. Now when we increase creative volume, now we've got more revenue, right? So it's more so, I would try not to focus on everything all at once, like increase creative volume, fix conversion rate, fix AOV. You need to just see where you need to focus your time and what's going to have the biggest kind of impact on actual revenue.
Yeah. So what I'm seeing from this is that basically, one, you're really good at like analyzing bottlenecks in the business, and then number two, you're really good at having like a really strong experimentation program everywhere in the business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've built just a thing for this, because what I want to do is we built with AI just this tool. It's like, we use the ICE framework, so like impact, confidence, ease. We use that for actually all of our projects now, because at any given time we have 50 projects that we want to do that we think is going to do, like, you know, we're going to grow revenue with this, but then we really have to think about that, and then we rank them with the ICE, and then we also have hypothesis. So what metric are we trying to move with this, and then the hypothesis behind it, and then next week we have to review that, and then we can mark it as failed, complete, whatever, and that way we can track our percentage of, like, it's like hit rate for creative, right?
Yep.
And the whole thinking behind this is, we maybe be at a 40% hit rate on our ideas, but if we at least track them and we have that feedback loop, by the end of the year maybe we get to a 60 or 70%. So our actual decision making process gets better because we're keeping track of things. If you don't keep track of them, I feel like you just don't get better. You just make the same decisions, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I love that, bro. I'm really excited to hear that, because like I think about that all day long, because we just focus on like A/B testing so fast. Everything is like hypotheses, impact grading, doing the test, and then going back to square one. And I talk about this in like every mastermind. I think you even mentioned it at the last Made Man. I always have this quote from like Jeff Bezos, like, how many experiments can you run in the company? Mm-hmm. So I think like you did a really great job at like applying this principle to like every part of the business, basically, of figuring out a way of not only doing creatives, or not only doing the funnels, or not only doing the offers, but like even the way that I understand is like even launching new products or like changing things in the organization, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, very cool. Then in the next step, I would say, because from my perspective, that seems to be a huge competitive edge for you guys. It's the whole post-purchase upsell flow. Yeah. So maybe you can dive a bit deeper into the whole post-purchase upsell strategy. You already mentioned a bunch of like really, really valuable things. So maybe just take me through that high level for people listening. How many upsells do you do? Do you have like different upsells, downsells? What are some of them physical products? Are some of them digital products? Are some of them subscription products? How do you conceptualize a strong post-purchase upsell flow? Yeah,
definitely. So right now we've like accumulated scripts that just work over time. The first proper upsell that I ever had was that when we just had a single SKU on Meta, and I was working with a guy called Alan Sultanic. He's got an HB mastermind. I was in Fast Forward, his higher level one, and he literally helped me write an upsell one, and I was like, holy shit, this is crazy. And then the next time we launched a product, I was like, we'll just use the same framework of the script, and it banged. So that was our first, we rinsed that. We still use that to this day. Then we had a product that we launched that was consumable, and again we basically worked on this script for a consumable as like a more of the same script, and now that's just the control. Anything we try to write doesn't beat it, and anytime we launch a consumable, this is the script we use. So with upsells, the framework is really what matters. Of course the product is what matters. The unique mechanism has to make sense and the product has to work, but in terms of literal frameworks, you can pretty much plug and play these. We've got more of the same. We've got this one. Then we've got some kind of like you can bundle a whole suite of products together. You know, this is it's like a protocol maybe we sell, right? Typically upsell one, we're going to price, you want to cascade the price down. So you want to have the highest price first, and I would nearly double or triple the price of your front end product, because price elasticity is so high on upsell one. And we've got data to back this, because before we had an upsell that was $150, we doubled the price to go to $300. The take rate used to be like 33%, and when we doubled the price, the take rate went down to 22%. Yes, big jump, but it's not that big a jump. If we doubled the front end price, conversion rate would go from 2% to 0.2%, right? So the price elasticity is huge in upsell one, and you can sell stuff for a lot more than you would think there. So we want to push the limits, and we want to test as much as possible in this range here. And we know we've got metrics internally that we want to hit there. Upsell 2 is going to be slightly less, and what we want to do is usually offer them multiple different bundles. So if upsell 1 is just take this or leave it, right? We'll have, normally if they say no thank you, we'll have a downsell straight into upsell 2, which is going to be another VSL, typically around 8 minutes long, and that is going to have like a 1, 2 plus 1, or 3 plus 2, right? It's normally some kind of offer structure at the bottom, and that will allow to drive higher AOV, but it'll also allow people, if they don't have enough money or they don't want to spend a bunch, to at least take something. So the take rate stays high, and the AOV is pretty high as well, because you've got a mix of people buying first, second and third bundle. The third upsell is pretty much for us always supplements. It's always the argument comes to a close, and it's basically like, hey, great, you've solved the problem. The last thing you want to do now is to basically slip back into that, and this is how you achieve that with these supplements. On that, we do have a subscription there. They can take a sub and save, where they'll save 10%, take it or leave it, but it's not a massive portion because it is upsell 3, and because they've just come through maybe a 15 to 20 minute long upsell 1, an 8 to 10 minute upsell 2, there is a lot of drop off. So if 1,000 people buy, maybe 200 see upsell 3.
Yeah, makes sense. And right now you already covered a bit of like one-time versus subscription. How do you think about that, and how do you what do you want to optimize for on the front end and the upsells?
Yeah, so we are launching 2 new brands, and these are CAC to LTV based. So these are basically subscription based. I do think we have a big advantage. There's reasons why people don't do both, and I always wondered why, and recently I kind of understood why. So if you've got like a $50 product and your AOV on Meta is going to be $60, right? You're looking for your CAC to be, say, $50, no problem. So you're acquiring an awful lot of customers. For the same revenue, if you've got a 150 AOV, you're actually acquiring half the amount of customers. Like, yes, okay, cool, you've got a much higher AOV, but the thing is, the LTV game is you want as many customers as possible. So that's why. But I do, basically with the new brand we're launching, I have a way to implement both our upsell process and the subscription process. It's not going to squeeze as much out of each customer, but I think that it's a hypothesis again. I think that we can have a nice blend of the both, where we have a nice high AOV, and we also have the recurring element that should have long tail LTV rather than like a short tail LTV. So that's what I think right now. I do love the CAC to LTV game because it just makes life so much easier when you are scaling on cold traffic, right? Like if you can be 20% profitable after 3 months and you've got really good unit economics, your life is so much easier. And there's a lot more optimization you can do too, right? Because yes, the optimizations happen over a longer time period. Like if you make a change with the idea to reduce churn, you don't really know for a month, 2 months, 3 months. Whereas if you're trying to tweak AOV, you know day one. But in the end, it is definitely, for me, it's a much better strategy.
Yeah. And for the upsell specifically, you already mentioned that you have like physical product, you have supplement. Mm-hmm. I see a lot of brands doing digital products, apps, memberships. Is that something that you include too? Is that something that you care about or like already have included in the upsell flow?
We thought about apps, honestly, but it almost was like a shiny object for us. Like I was thinking a lot of apps. We even were looking into consumer apps on the front end, but we kind of have our structure now that works. And I think we'd have to build the whole app out, because if we're going to build an app, we want to make sure that it's robust. It means hiring another engineer, It just seems like a bit of a side quest.
Okay, makes sense. And I think that the last thing that I want to cover in this section, and you already mentioned in the beginning, most people, I would say, they probably have like 80% of their ad spend on Facebook and then 20% on Google. Obviously, they do email, and then like not a lot do native at all, or even AppLovin. So how did you even get introduced to like the whole native space? And what made you like go all in there, and like how quickly were you able to kind of see results and scale it there, where now it's like a way bigger channel for you than Facebook is?
Mm-hmm. Native was just because of the industry we're in, like there's a lot of big people spending on native, and then a good friend of mine, you know as well, Maxi, he was just launching on native. He's a beauty business, and he got some initial traction. I was like, fuck, like this has to work for us. So
yeah.
There's a couple of levers you need to pull on native, and it took us a while to get there. We started on Taboola, and we had got a media buyer who worked for Agora, thinking this is going to be perfect, like he's really experienced. Could not make it work at all. Then we got a different media buyer, made it work a little bit. When I say that, I mean like $500-600 spent a day, break even. So just was nothing special. Then Maxi's media buyer had some space. He took on the offer, and he's a really good media buyer. So the media buyer piece is so important with native. They need to be really good. Then we launched, and we were having so many problems with compliance, like just bullshit stuff that was like happening on a recurring basis. And then it was actually at your mastermind last year or the year before, I met a very, very good Taboola rep. He looked at our stuff and was like, bro, this is no problem. Move to us. We moved with him, and he looked and he gave us, on the compliance standpoint, these are the 4 things you need to change for compliance to be happy. Rather than this just like random, just like, yeah, it's not compliant. It's like, okay, well, what do we do with this, right? He said, this and this need to change, and you're good to go. Change those things. We were live. No more constraint in terms of like rejections. So we had a good media buyer, and then he scaled us very far. He was not freelancer, but like I would say kind of boutique. It was just him, but had a couple of clients. Then we hired who in my opinion is the best native media buyer in the world. This guy's, I've never worked with anyone like him. We hired him, and he scaled up our offers like so aggressively. But the way he thinks is he looks at approval rates, right? He looks at every part of the process that can affect his revenue and his performance. Click-through rates on advertorials, headlines. He does his own creative. He literally will go, guys, what the fuck? Approval rate is down 4% yesterday. What's going on? Like, this is how in depth he thinks about the process. Yeah. And that was just like a game changer as well. So he helped us scale massively. So I would say the 3 biggest levers are like your account reps, your media buyer, and then of course that long form advertorial that we talked about. Like really having that cold traffic offer. You have to remember, there is no VSL, there is no video ad that they're seeing. They're seeing a headline this length and a weird curiosity based ad. So you need to dial in. Your Facebook listicle is not going to work on Meta or on native.
Yeah, makes sense. I think it's super interesting because I mean, I've been talking about like native and Taboola a lot over the years, because I was always thinking like a lot of e-com people, they are trying to find competitive edges, sometimes with like marketing, sometimes with like offers, with whatever 3PL. And then I'm thinking like, bro, there's like a channel where there's like so few competition, because everybody's doing Facebook first. Some people are trying Google, and nobody's thinking about native. I'm like, that's like one of the biggest competitive edges. Like if you crack native, you like, obviously there's some people that are cracking native, they're doing crazy numbers, but overall there's not too much competition, specifically in like the e-com D2C space.
Yeah, and like US clicks are like sub 40 cent, right? Imagine Facebook had sub 40 cent clicks. Like it's crazy. And you have to think about the quality of the buyer. They're reading MSN, they're reading Yahoo, they're intelligent buyers. They've probably got money. There's no one, like, I'm sure there's a few, but like it's very rare it's going to be some social security lazy dude sitting there reading MSN, right? It's a more sophisticated buyer that probably has money to spend.
Yeah, no, man, this section was really, really insightful. Even for me, I was like taking some notes. I was like, I'm gonna just go back and sit on like some of the upsets that I'm working on right now of some other brands. So that was really cool. I think that the next section I really want to go on is a bit more of like the, how do you think as an operator of the brand, right? It was really interesting for me. I don't know if you want to talk too much about this, but I know you have like a co-founder. Like, how do you think about operation? How do you think about your role in the business? How maybe have you divided the roles with your co-founder? And just like from that perspective of an operator of the brand, how do you think about it? Like, what's your POV?
This is something we're working on heavily at the moment. I would say we brute forced our way to where we were with. I only just thought of it like this, but we hired a lot of people, and they're exceptional people. But we basically just gave myself and my business partner, we gave us more arms. So what it came to was do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. So we just gave ourselves more arms. What we need to do is give ourselves another brain. So instead of saying do this, do this, do this, we need to be able to give our team leads outcomes and let them think through how to actually solve them, and then the responsibility is on them. That's not what we did last year, and this is currently how we're restructuring things now, because we have the people in the business that can do this. It was just more of a on my side, I kind of messed up there, where I was like, move fast, I know what we need to do here, and we didn't really give them the keys to go, look, you guys go figure it out, you're more than capable. So I would say right now, this is what we're trying to solve. There is another problem, is there is no clear split in terms of like CMO between myself and my partner, because we're both marketing heavy, and that's another thing we're trying to solve right now. We've interviewed so many performance marketing managers and CMOs, and we've obviously got a really high standard. We haven't been able to find one, so we're kind of splitting the work, and the way we're doing it now is we're splitting it by channel. So she will be in charge of some channels, I'll be in charge of some others. But again, if we want to grow to the 250, we really need to be able to come out of the business to, like you said, operator. Right now, both of us are semi-operator, semi-executor. Like, I'm still writing copy, I'm still writing upsells, she's still writing advertorials, the odd time we're writing ads. Like, really at a $250 million company, the founders, I don't believe, should be as involved or as busy. Of course, if that's your edge, I think you should stay close to it, but I just don't think you should be, like, if you looked at my to-do list on a certain week, it's like, that's a full-time job just to write that copy, right? So I also have to think about the company. So that's one point I would say we're probably pretty weak in, but we're trying to solve it.
Yeah, interesting. And for me, one thing that you mentioned was interesting is that, like, you go away from giving yourself more arms to like finding new brains. How do you go about solving this right now in terms of like getting people that are potentially the same level like you are in certain areas, or potentially like even better in the areas?
Yeah, I think it's just opportunity, right? I think it's difficult, but the people we do have in the company now have had so much exposure because we have done so much, so they've seen the way we operate. The other thing that I've been working on is with Claude is amazing. I just voice note it. Like, let's say I made a management handbook, like, because a lot of our managers, they were just previously individual contributors that did really well, that got promoted to be management, but they'd never managed before. No. And the same, I had never managed before, but because I hadn't managed before, I basically just read a fuckload of books on management, theory of constraints, on like a book called Multipliers. I'm reading at them, all of this stuff, and I just distilled all my learnings, talked to Claude, and turned it into an ebook, which then I give that to my managers. The same with like growth. If I'm looking at how to diagnose a funnel, I'm just speaking to Claude. I get the output, I slightly edit it, and then I turn it into a book that I can give to them. And they've been exposed, so they understand anyway, but it's just good to have that reference point to think through and be like, okay, yeah, if I'm making a decision, I can refer back to this if I have to, right? And it's as easy as them feed that PDF to Claude and say, hey, this is the problem we're dealing with. I'm thinking of solving it like this. Does that make sense? And then it can reference the ebook, and the ebook will be like, yep, you're good. And then they can have confidence in their decision. Yeah,
makes sense. It's really interesting. I feel like I'm like the exact same position, like our company. I've started reading like Effective Executive. I'm just reading right now how Google works, which was like blowing my mind. And there's so many interesting books where I think that the best companies, it's almost like the founders are not involved at all. Like they have a high level vision and they motivate everybody, but then they are not really doing anything. It almost seems like, right? It's so fascinating with like these huge companies.
Yeah, and the thing about it as well is like, if you do have this great talent, which like you guys have got some crazy clients, so you've obviously got the talent in the company already. But if it was just you giving them tasks to execute every single week, then people do not become any more valuable for your company. Whereas if you give them the outcome, even if they fall short, you can coach them, you can get them coaching, and the next time you give them the outcome, they hit it. They've now just become way more valuable for your company because they have the skill set they need to solve that problem. And over time, these people just get so much more valuable. And if you've got multiple of these people, all of a sudden the whole company is more valuable. You've got way better people because they're leveling up the same way you are.
No. How do you go about coaching your employees and like making sure that they become more valuable, and that not only, like, for example, you already mentioned, like, they are great at, let's just say, copywriting, media buying, creative strategy, and now you promote them to managers. Like, what do you do from your perspective? Maybe not only you coaching them yourself, but like giving them courses, giving them mentorships. Like, how do you think about developing people and talent in your company?
Yeah, so we have a rule in the company, like anyone who comes into the company can have any training, any consulting call. Like, if you're in the company and you look at Primal Queen and you're like, their landing pages are sick, like, go and reach out to whoever built that on LinkedIn, find them and offer to pay them for consulting. We'll go to our finance team, they'll approve it, they know I approve it straight away, right? But that you have to apply what you learned. None of this mental masturbation where you're like, yeah, I need this mastermind, you join it and you don't attend any of the calls. So any education externally, we will pay for, no problem. And then internally, I think it's about feedback loops. Like, if you're a creative strategist, you need to be close to your work. Like, if you start with us, we're going to give you, here's how to find the post-purchase surveys. I've recorded countless looms on, like, here's how I do research. Here's our controls over the last while. We give you the information, go into the wild and actually put it to use. And then you need to start getting feedback loops, because I can sit and talk to you all day, but until you've actually submitted your work, got feedback from the market, and then applied an iteration and then give that, and you get that feedback loop, like, it's just information that lives in your head otherwise, right?
Yeah, 100%. And one super interesting learning for me, and I'm interested to hear your point of view on this, is that just the other day, like, we sat down with the leadership team, and like me and my co-founder, we were like pressing them on like one issue where we were like, okay, this should be like this, but it's like this right now. And then they're explaining like a huge blind spot to us that like me and my co-founder both didn't see. And they were like, okay, well, we will just completely block the next 2 weeks, because if we solve this inefficiency that has been in the company for 5 years that we didn't see, it's going to like double the value. It's going to be like huge, right? And like, I'm every day thinking about this conversation. I'm like, how the fuck could we miss this huge inefficiency and this huge blind spot in the company? How do you go about that with your team? Like, how do you make sure that your team comes to you, your team challenges you, and you kind of stay on top of things?
That's the number one thing about getting out of the execution work. You have time to like sit above it and really diagnose. Like, a lot of times it comes back to what I said with the 0.6 conversion rate. A lot of times you're looking at something and you're trying to solve a problem in a certain way, but that's not how you need to solve the problem. It's like, for me especially, is like, I'm trying to solve every problem as a marketing problem when it could be a unit economics problem. Yeah. Right? But you do need that space to think, or like you said there, you need your team to feel like it's safe to come to you with the, hey, by the way, we're experiencing this. Like, if they're boots on the ground, really close to it, they need to be able to elevate that up to you and know that it's, you're not going to bite their head off, right? So I think just the way that you lead, if they bring you something and you receive it well, I think they're going to be happy and they're going to be confident to bring you something else. Whereas if you just react like, what the fuck? They're like, I'm never telling him anything. You know, I'm just going to fight it. We had issues with it just in Q4 where we had seasonal staff, and they basically hid a bunch of metrics, and we only found out about it in February, and it was super detrimental to the business, right? So that is a different situation where they were only seasonal, so they were just like, well, fuck this, so I'm not going to tell anyone. But you need people to be able to bring you those problems, otherwise, you know, you're not going to find them.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Some of the things that I want to ask is, to close this, what do you think, because we've covered so much ground, right? We talked about the niche, we talked about the brand, we talked about like super funnel marketing specific stuff, now about like operations, founder leadership. High level, what do you think most people that are in e-com just get fundamentally wrong? Where you're looking at the market, you're looking at other people in masterminds, and you're like, how the fuck can everybody get this wrong?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people, like when we started the brand, right? We said we want to sell for $100 million, right? It's not going to happen. But I think a lot of people just don't have a goal. So their goal is like, they actually don't have one. They're like, oh, we're going to do 50 million this year. But it's like, what's are you going to try and exit the company? Is this for enterprise value? Is this just a cash cow? Like, what is the goal of this? Because then you have a lens to solve problems through. Whereas most people don't have this goal. So then how do you make any decisions, right? Whereas, you are facing an issue with X and you're like, well, we're a cash cow, so you have much more creative ways to solve problems. But also, if you're going to be built for exit, right, where you're strictly built for exit, there's certain things you can't do, right? There's certain ways you cannot solve problems. And I think a lot of people just don't have that in mind. They don't have any kind of end goal. They just show up to their business every day hoping to make more money, right? So they've no lens to solve problems. And also it comes down to unit economics as well. I think like a lot of people, like we did when we started, they just don't think of the unit economics, right? Long term, how does that work when we apply OpEx? They don't think about that. Again, I think it's like, for me anyway, and I think this applies to most of the people I know, it's trying to solve everything as a marketing problem. So before we built this company, I thought of everything as ROAS. Everything was ROAS. So there was any other metric made no difference to me. It was just like, well, break-even ROAS is 1.4. If we're getting 1.6 ROAS, it's fine. And all we looked at was marketing. But there's so much more. Like where we make all of our profit is on these little advantages. We have a call center, right? We do high-ticket stuff on the back end. All of these different things that allow us to make more money, right? That allow us to spend more, have a higher CAC, and that's basically understanding the business model that you're in. Again, we know this one is a cash cow. The next brands that we launch have enterprise value, so we have to build them in a different way.
Yeah. And how were you personally able to go from like dropshipper caring about ROAS to now becoming like a really solid and intelligent entrepreneur where you understand the whole business structure at like a more in-depth level?
I think exposure, like for example, I've used this example so many times. We brought on a CFO, he's sick. I had no idea about finance metrics. I didn't even know contribution margin, right? And then we took him in, he built the finance function, and all of a sudden I've got exposure to someone who's a specialist with finance, and I start speaking his language and I ask him questions like, why are you measuring this metric? What does this mean? Like, this sort of stuff, seeing how he works. Same in all the different departments. And then I think maybe like a meta skill, understanding theory of constraints, and then you can kind of apply that knowledge to any department. Like even if you've not much knowledge on it, if you're thinking about the creative department, then you just apply that thinking. Like how do we build projects around dependencies? Like ask the question. It's like Elon Musk has his thing. It's like question the requirements, right? I might come to you. We're doing it right now with our payment processing team. We have something that she's like, it's going to be 7 to 11 weeks. And I sound like a dumbass because I have no idea why, but I'm like, could we do it like this? Why do we have to do that? And then getting those answers, and over time, it's just like you acquire a lot more knowledge the longer you're in the business. Like if you had dropped me into this business a year ago, even we were doing solid revenue, I would be completely lost. But the same thing, the business at 250 million, if you were to just put me in there now, I would have no idea what the fuck is going on. But over time, you build up those skills that you need. We didn't just hire finance, HR, payment processing team. We didn't put them all in at once. It was like a step by step. So it gives you time to absorb the knowledge, and then the next thing comes in.
No. And what would you say on the one hand side has the highest ROI, and on the other hand side, how do you make sure to get the highest ROI? Because I know you're investing a lot in great people, you're investing a lot in masterminds, you're investing a lot into consultants, coachings and everything. Like how do you identify high ROI things, and then how do you make sure to get a lot of ROI from that?
I think you have to question what, like high ROI, like last week might not be high ROI this week, because again, it's what problem are we trying to solve? What, like ultimately we want to grow revenue. That's you're a business. At the end of the day, you want to grow revenue. That is our ultimate goal. So then you reverse what's stopping us from that. And for someone like you mentioned, 90% of businesses like this, our industry, they are 80% Meta, 20% Google, right? And you might be spending 100% of your energy. We need better creative. But if you just took 20% of that energy and started AppLovin, you get 200% returns. So it's just, you have to kind of think outside the box and question why you're doing things, and see like, is this going to be, and this only comes with time. Is this going to be a asymmetrical return, or is this like an incremental gain? Because incremental gains, they're great, but we want to go for like something that's going to increase revenue by 20%, or it falls flat on its face by 20%, because then you can kill it fast, or you can double down on it, right? Incremental for us, if we want to go from 75 to 250, we're not going to do that incrementally. We have to take these big home run swings, and I'd rather than be a complete flop so we can just kill it after a couple of days, right?
100%. And would you say to identify those asymmetrical returns, is it rather you being exposed to other brand owners? Is it you being exposed to people in a different industry? Is it you reading books? Like, how do you come up with that?
Yeah. I will say we kind of fell into this because AppLovin became a huge platform and we had never thought about another platform. We got into AppLovin and we scaled from 0 to 280k per day in like 2 weeks or something. It might have even been a week. So that was it was like exposure. I've seen this is possible. So then I started to think about other platforms. Well, if there's, and the thing is, these were net new customers. They were not coming from Facebook and being retargeted. These were net new customers. So that opened my mind to be like, there is more customers around. So then we tried native, we tried Google cold. That was one eye opener. The same thing, it was experimentation. We just launched a new product and then that doubled revenue. And then I was like, okay, now I have that in my back pocket where I can just go, we can also launch a new product, and instead of putting 100% of our effort into CRO with incremental gains, which is like fantastic again, as I said, but if we just pull 20% of those out, we still do our CRO stuff here and apply it to a new offer, we now double revenue or increase revenue by 50%. So it has just been kind of like over time testing different things. But a big thing is talking to other founders, as you mentioned. Like, a lot of people say, hey, we tried this upsell, or hey, we tried this new channel or this new ad format. And then we'll get curious, we'll bring it in-house and we'll of course test it. But I think the biggest ones you're going to have is just get curious in your own business and just test stuff that is not a headline test or a button color. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Man, I'm loving this conversation. I will just, because you're so turned on, you're so smart. Like I love doing this. So just to kind of round this up for the people listening, if they take one thing away from this whole conversation and you could only say one thing, like what should it be for them?
I think it's to, as we've just been talking about, I think really look at what the constraint of the business is. Most businesses are, including us, extremely busy. The founder is working all the time. The staff are being pushed like crazy. If you're working like that and week over week you're not increasing your revenue, you're doing something wrong, right? So it's not normal to work on your business extremely hard and to not get anywhere week after week. So you have to think about it, right? And I have done it so often. I think a lot of people do. You need to look at where the real problem is, because you don't actually need to be busy, you need to be effective. You need to solve the problem, not all the problems at once. And a lot of the times if you zoom out, maybe it's your break-even ROAS is 2, right? You're not solving that by better creative. That's an economics problem. And then you have to think to yourself, am I going to go back to the drawing board and am I going to negotiate with suppliers? Am I going to try and do something creative there? Maybe I can't use meta ads and I'm going to leverage TikTok shop because I can set a fixed CPA there, so it's going to work. But if you just keep doing the same, like, okay, well, we're just going to do creative output, we're going to do this landing page test, you have your break even is 2, that's an uphill battle, right? You will, of course, some people will scale on that, but it's not going to be $100 million in my opinion, unless you have some celebrity endorsements. Maybe you're not bootstrapped and you're taking on capital and you're building it to exit. But I think most of the people watching this are probably bootstrapped founders, and if you're doing the same thing every week and revenue isn't growing, you need to zoom out and have a look at like, okay, I'm doing something wrong here. What is the real problem I need to solve here?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I took a lot of notes, but my 2 main things that I highlighted was constraints and asymmetrical returns. Those are my 2 things. So I was like putting it in big highlights when I was taking notes. But yeah, bro, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. I will make sure to leave all your links down below so people know where to find you. And yeah, hope to see you in person soon again.
Nice one, bro. See you soon.